Hey guys, it's Hang553. Welcome back to another Beyblade X unboxing and review. Today we're going to be checking out a bit of an older core release from Takara, that being Orochi Cluster. Now going over the packaging quickly, as you can see it's your standard B full brown box and whatnot. So nothing too crazy, just its name and its combo at the bottom. So let's get into this. So here is Orochi Cluster out of the packaging. Now this bag was actually a fan voted design, combining two designs that got fan voted and basically got turned into a new bag, which is pretty cool. Now this was also a core mail away, so you could only have gotten this if you mailed off the little mailer thing from the core magazine back when that was available. And as a result, Orochi Cluster is going for quite a lot right now, hundreds of dollars, which is quite ridiculous. Now, the only new part we get here is the blade. The two other parts, the ratchet and the bit, we've gotten before, but still love the colors on these. But let's now take a deep dive into all the parts that Orochi Cluster comes with. So first off, we have the Orochi Cluster blade itself. So this is a UX bay, so long chunks of plastic, and the metal is more allocated to the outer weight distribution. Love the motif of this blade, both in the gear chip and in the metal. Looks really sick. Now it has two big major contact points on the blade, so that's where a lot of your damage is going to be coming from. But you're probably not really going to be making much use of it, as mainly with the ratchet orientation. So the way that they have the ratchets lock on is with the two smaller sides, so you're not able to really line up any of your, say, a 160 ratchet onto the two big contact points, which is really unfortunate. As a result, if you're using, say, again, a 160 ratchet, it is going to be very exposed on the smaller sides, which does mean you're going to be at more risk of bursting, which is really unfortunate. Had the ratchet orientation been way better, this honestly could have been a game-changing bay. But because of that, it does tend to struggle quite a bit, as it's not really being able to use a ratchet to really emphasize on those contact points, and plus leads to it to being a bit unbalanced, which isn't great. Looks-wise though, looks awesome. I could definitely see why they decided to make this the fan vote design, but on the other hand, practically, not the best blade. Next up, we have the 660 ratchet. We've been talking about this part lately in other reviews. But 6 attrition points at the 60 height. Pretty decent ratchet. Little bursty though. But love the colors on this. I think it looks great. But apart from that, it is a part we have gotten quite a bit now. But still a really nice part. Again, not the best ratchet available, but it does have its uses in certain combos. Finally, for the bit, we have low flat. Not a new part, we've gotten this part quite a bit now, but we've got some new colors for it. Love this dual molding colors. Looks really great. Matches up with the blade and the ratchet really nicely. But apart from that, it's a part we've gotten many times before. A little bit outclassed now, mainly due to low rush, but even still, it can be a pretty decent attack type bit. With this combination of parts, it makes Orochi Cluster an attack type. So let's now head over to the scales and weigh up all the parts that this bag comes with. Alright, let's now get some weights for Orochi Cluster. So, low flat, that weighs 2.12 grams. 660 weighs 6.2 grams. And then the Orochi Cluster blade, this one weighs 36.58 grams, so that is not too bad weight-wise. For another comparison, here's the one I've had for a while now, and this one weighs 36.29, so it seems like the ballpark for this is around 36.3 to about maybe 36.6. but even still, not a bad weight for it at all. So let's now put the bay together. 660, low flat. Love the colors. I think the colors look great on this. So altogether, Orochi cluster weighs 44.9 grams exactly. So let's now head over to the stadium and do some test spins and some test battles. Alright, now we're going to do some test spins and some test battles with Orochi cluster. So let's try this out. Now being on low flat, obviously hitting the extreme line quickly. So we'll give the stock combo a go first, and I might swap it to a different combo later on to see how it does with a bit more of a somewhat more competitive combo. But it does look really cool. It's just a shame that the ratchet contact doesn't line up with the two big blades, because I'll be honest, if it actually did line up, like if you line up a 160 to one of the big contact points, this honestly could have been a big threat, honestly, because having all that weight on one side would be, I would think, pretty competitively viable. But let's now see how Orochi cluster does against some opponents. Okay, that was not the intention, but that happened. Alright, so I've just changed up the bit on Orochi, so I've just swapped it to low rush. So we're actually going to see how Orochi does with a bit that has a bit more stamina compared to low flat. So that's it for my look at Orochi Cluster. Really nice bay overall. The blade itself honestly does perform pretty decently, but definitely the ratchet orientation is what really lets this bay down competitively. That's really the main killer. If the ratchet orientation had been a bit better, this could have been a bit of a meta threat, but nowadays it's not really competitively viable unless you're using a gimmicky format like the Double Extreme or Infinity or even a Hasbro Stadium. As for the rest of the parts, they're alright. I mean, 660 is a nice reprint to get. Low Flat's pretty old now, and a lot of reprints since, so not the best attack type bit to get nowadays. But probably really the main killer, though, is the price on the secondary market. This bay has shot up in price massively back when this first came out at the beginning of the year, so getting it now is virtually impossible. Now, there could be a very slim chance we may see this from Hasbro, considering that Hasbro did release the Core Bike Truck in a deluxe set. There could be a possibility we may see this as Coil Orochi in maybe a deluxe set itself, but there's nothing confirming that right now. But I would say that's probably would be your best chance to get it if Hasbro does release it, which kind of got my fingers crossed. But overall, not a bad bay, but just not really worth hundreds of dollars. So my final thoughts on Orochi Cluster are a little bit mixed. The blade itself is pretty decent, but not the best. Again, the ratchet orientation is definitely what kills it. The parts it comes with it is okay, but it's not worth the secondary prices right now. I guess we can kind of hope for either Takara to reissue it later down the line, or Hasbro releasing it on their own for prices for them to come down, hopefully. So I would honestly say you would want to hopefully hold out long enough for that to maybe potentially happen, but I wouldn't really say it's worth pulling the trigger for this bay with the current prices. It's just way too high. But it's still a nice bay, but just not worth hundreds of dollars nice. But anyways, that's gonna do it for this review. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for more Beyblade X videos in the future. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and also check out all my other friends' channels in the description below. So until then, I'll see you all in the next video.